Hi, this is Ritvik Raja and I'm extremely happy to welcome you to my first ever video series, Tambura 101. Here, we will explore in detail the many facets of this magnificent instrument called the Tambura. We will discuss its sound, aesthetic, structure, making and tuning among many other things. This is the Tambura, which is often seen in live concerts offering a unique sound while creating also an aesthetic backdrop for the musicians on stage. The Tambura is the name used by Carnatic musicians, while Tanpura is the name used by Hindustani musicians. The instrument is widely used in both of these systems. It is extremely important for Indian classical musicians to have a complete understanding of this instrument. Let us now look at the history of the Tambura. Traditionally, there are many theories from where the instrument might have originated from and where it gets its name from. One theory is that the Tambura is a combination of the two words Tan and Pura. Tan means the swara or the swar and Pura means complete. So the name Tanpura was believed to signify the importance of the complete and definitive swara in Indian classical music, for which the Tambura provides the canvas. Some believe that sage Tumburu created the first form of the Tambura, and hence the instrument has been named after him. This is a Miraj Tambura, and this portion of the Miraj Tambura, which is the main resonating chamber for this instrument, is called the Tumba. Hence, it could also be possible that the instrument is named after the Tumba that gives this particular Tambura its sound and life. When the Persian musicians came to India, they brought along a lute-like instrument called the Tanbur, which essentially means a long-necked stringed instrument, much like the Tambura. This instrument owes its heritage to southern or central Asia. In fact, many instruments with almost identical names can be found in the Middle East, Central Asia and even parts of North Africa today. But historically, there is no concrete evidence for any of the above to definitely say where the instrument got its name from. Now moving on from the name, let us look at the form of the instrument. There are two independent beliefs with respect to the present form of the Tambura that has evolved over time. One thought is that it was a natural development tracing back to India's own indigenous instruments. There are several mentions of stringed instruments mentioned in historical texts like Matanga's Brihadeshi or even earlier texts that mention the Ektara and the Dotara. But there has never been a mention of an instrument like a Tambura or a drone-like string instrument that was ever used by Indian classical musicians, not even in the Natya Shastra. The Ektara is a beautiful single-string instrument that is held in one hand and strummed while singing in many folk and street music traditions. Perhaps the Tambura is an evolution of that instrument. The other possibility is that it evolved from the instrument called the Tanbur, which we discussed just a little earlier, brought to India by the Arab and Persian musicians. The native Tanbur looked much like our own indigenous string instruments, and it is difficult to definitively say how they influenced each other and developed in form and structure over time. But the Tambura, in its present form with 4 strings, are found in pictorial representations, artworks and paintings on record from the 17th century onwards. So what differentiates a Tambura from any of the other plucked stringed instruments? Very simply put, any string or wire that is tied between 2 points and plucked will resonate at a very specific frequency. However, the overtones that it may produce are extremely limited, if any. But the Tambura is intricate and has the refinement to produce the desired pitch or tonic, along with many layers of harmonics and a multitude of overtones to provide an experience that is extremely unique. Indeed, the Tambura is a beautiful invention in its form and aesthetic. It is extremely complex in creation and requires a lot of precision when it is being crafted. The Tambura is often referred to as a drone instrument. But what does that really mean? A drone sound in music is a continuous monophonic frequency that is sounded in loop. But the Tambura is not just one frequency that sounds monotonous without any variation every time it is played. Calling it a drone instrument actually reduces the overall idea of what the Tambura is. Every time the Tambura is strummed, based on the pressure applied, the interval and the speed, the harmonics and the overtones are heard very differently with so many variables at play. Apart from providing the basic pitch or the Adhara Shadja, which the musician then uses as his reference point, it also provides a canvas that inspires the musician to explore and build on the complex tonal canvas. To further understand the sound of the tambura, let us first look at its structure. Carnatic and Hindustani musicians refer to the same parts of the tambura very differently with their own terminologies. Here, we will quickly go through the parts first, where I will provide the name in English, followed by their respective names in both of these systems. Let us now look at the different parts of the tambura, starting at the top. These are the pegs, known as baradai or kunti. These two structures are the upper bridge of the instrument, known as the meru or ad. The long stem of the instrument is called the dandi or the dand. The front portion of the dandi is called the fingerboard or the kai palagai or the patta. The neck joint that is specific to the Miraj tambura is called the GULLU. The front part of the base of the instrument is the soundboard, also known as the munpalagai or the tabli. The base of the instrument, that is made out of gourd in Miraj tamburas and out of wood in other tamburas, is known as the kodam or the tumba. This is the bridge, or also known as the guraj. The thread that you find on the bridge is known as nulir or jiva or ji. The beads are known as mani, manika or guli. The anchor or the tailpiece is known as the lango. The strings are called tandi. Let us now look at the different materials that go into the making of the tambura. The Miraj tambura is made using the toon wood or the red cedar wood, which is the most preferred for Miraj tamburas. However, teak wood is also used, even though it makes the instrument a lot heavier. I have heard that the Drupad musicians prefer the teak wood tamburas as they feel that the more weighty and rich sound satisfies the demands of their style of music. The South Indian tamburas are entirely made out of wood. The Tanjavur tambura uses only jackwood, which is also used to make the main resonating chamber of the mridangam, which is a South Indian percussion instrument. The Trivandrum tamburas are made from a combination of teak wood and rosewood. There are also a few other tamburas which use other woods like shisham wood and country wood. The bridge for the Miraj tambura was traditionally made out of ivory or deer horn, but is currently made out of camel bone or ebony wood. South Indian tamburas only used bridges that were made out of hardwood, and the ones made out of the Karangali tree wood is considered the most suitable to bring out the best sound from the Tanjavur variety tambura. The beads or the mani were also made out of ivory before, but the newer ones are presently made out of bone or plastic. The other materials used in crafting the instrument are celluloid, wax and paint for decorations, shellac and varnish to polish, gum and other locally made adhesives, metal strings, normally made from either steel, brass, bronze or copper. Let us now see how all these different materials are put together to make this magnificent instrument. The entire process of making a tambura is one that requires a lot of patience. To make a good sounding instrument, it may take more than a year at times to get every part of the instrument just right. The first step in beginning to create this piece of art is to carefully identify the wood and then thoroughly cure it. This piece of wood is then dried for over a year, sometimes even kiln dried additionally, to season, strengthen and toughen. This process is extremely crucial to make sure that the instrument can hold up against even the slightest of climate and temperature changes. The selection of wood is done with care to ensure that there are no knots on the surface, the grains are flowing throughout, and that there is enough to ensure that the entire instrument can be crafted from the same source. This ensures that the overall sound is uniform. Keep in mind that the South Indian tamburas are entirely made out of wood, so they will require more in terms of quantity. Once the wood is selected and left aside, the next process is to select the gourd for the base of the instrument. There is an interesting anecdote on how the gourds came to be used for making the Miraj Tambura. It is believed that many travelers from Africa who came to India brought and stored honey in these large-sized gourds. Once the honey was finished, it was washed, treated and dried. On seeing the dried gourd, an instrument maker is believed to have incorporated it into the tambura that existed then, thus innovating with its form that has stood the test of time. The gourd is a variety of pumpkin that is poisonous and non-edible. They grow only in a couple of regions across the country, mostly along the riverbeds, and are harvested specially to make these instruments. The growth of these gourds can take up to 6 months at a time and are entirely dependent on the monsoon. Here I have to mention Farukh Bhai, the master craftsman in Miraj who belongs to the great lineage of Haji Abdul Karim Ismailsaheb and Sons, who also personally crafted this beautiful instrument. I remember him telling me with profound longing that because of the droughts in 2016 and the lack of monsoon rains, there were no large-sized gourds that were harvested that year, which then severely limited the number of orders for the full-sized tambura that they could undertake for the first time in many, many years. This shows how even we as musicians and them as instrument makers are entirely dependent on nature. Once the harvesting is done and the gourds are selected, the insides are carved and cleaned out, a liquid solution is applied along the walls to protect it from insects, and it is then sun-dried for over a period of 2 months. It is then hung from the ceiling inside the homes of these craftsmen for almost a year to dry and cure completely. During the entire process, the weight of the gourd, which can be anywhere between 20 and 40 kilograms at the time of the harvest, depending on its size, reduces down to just about a kilogram. These gourds are found in a multitude of hues and color, such as green, orange and yellow, and a combination of all of these. But it is believed that the yellow colored gourd produces the best sound when used to make the tumba. Once these individual processes are complete, they are then worked on and assembled piece by piece to give life and structure to the tambura. The tumba is the first part of the instrument that is worked on, where the previously selected and seasoned dried gourd is sliced and carved to specific dimensions. This is determined based on the pitch and the size of the tambura for which it is being used. Once the tumba is ready, the next piece that is attached is the neck joint or the gullu that is made entirely out of wood, which acts as a conduit that helps connects the tumba and the dandi, or the base of the tambura and the stem of the tambura. The tumba and the gullu are joined with glue and held together by nails and left alone to dry so that they can fuse together. It is also important to remember here that the craftsmen use bamboo nails and not the normal metal ones, as they believe that the latter sometimes can disrupt the final sound vibrations of the tambura. While the glue is drying, the dandi and the patta, which is the stem of the tambura and the fingerboard, are measured and attached together, and once they are dried, a small connector is then added to the base of the stem. This base extends to fit perfectly into the neck joint. It is essential to remember that even the stem or the dandi is entirely carved out from the inside before the fingerboard is attached. This is to make sure that the entire chamber is hollow for the sound to resonate. Once the stem or the dandi is ready, it is then inserted into the neck joint with an adhesive. This adhesive is a specially cooked concoction which is warmed and applied along the joints to hold the parts in place very firmly. Next, the tailpiece or the anchor that holds the other end of the strings in place is attached to the tumba. The final and the most critical step in the primary construction of the body of the instrument is the exact assembly of the soundboard or the tabli. It is important to keep in mind that the tabli must be made from a single piece of wood without any joints. Any such attachments or joints offer the possibility for sound to escape and can reduce the natural complete resonance of the instrument. Once the tabli is attached to the tumba, the gullu and the dandi, it is then nailed again with bamboo nails, glued and tied together with multiple strings of thread and left alone to dry. Now the entire body of the instrument is ready. The next step of the process is the art of decoration, where the instrument maker really leaves his signature. Old designs used ivory that naturally colored with age. These days, celluloid and colored wax are used together in combination to achieve the same finish. In fact, the decoration is sometimes so intricate and indicative that musicians often figure out who the craftsman is by just looking at the designs and the embellishments. Such is the impact of original workmanship. The beauty of the design is also that it conceals all the joints and brings together the whole visual image of the final instrument, the tambura, together so seamlessly that it feels like a natural part of the instrument and not an extravagant addition. I have personally always been intrigued by the design on the Miraj Tambura. The ones made in Calcutta have just the two birds on either side, but the ones made in Miraj depict a vine-like plant that is growing from a pot with leaves and flowers and fruits and two birds sitting on either side. When I asked Farukh Bhai what the thought behind this was, he said something that was extremely profound. He believes that the plant, which is portrayed so stunningly, is a metaphor for the journey of a musician. Right from when the seeds are sown as a student, to blossoming into a performer, and then ultimately maturing into an artist. He likens that process of growing and evolving to the growth of the plant, and says that when a musician gets their Miraj Tambura made, the design is meant to signify their progress. I found this extremely poignant, and worked with him to create a specific design, which he then beautifully recreated on my Tambura. I cannot thank him enough for sharing this wonderful insight with me. Once these decorations that have so much meaning are in place, the wood is then sanded down multiple times to make sure that it is uniformly smooth. Layers of shellac and varnish are applied throughout the instrument and then dried over a couple of weeks. The polish is then scraped just at the parts where the decorations are to bring them out from behind. Finally, the holes are drilled at the top part of the dandi or the stem, where the pegs are then added and fixed in place. The smoothing and positioning of the bridge is the final step, after which the strings are placed and tuned. For me, the most revealing aspect about this entire process is the sheer faith that these instrument craftsmen have in their own workmanship. To work on an instrument patiently with precision for over a year and toiling through its challenges without knowing what the outcome might be at the end, to finally be able to string the instrument and find out if the sound is worthy of the extremely high standards that they set for themselves, is truly an emotional journey. Their happiness and pride knows no bounds when a musician shares the same feeling and picks their instrument to be a part of his or her artistic journey. Such is their commitment, for which we as musicians are ever grateful. Now that the tambura is ready, let us look at how to tune this beautiful instrument.